Today, we're going to dive into a landmark 2006 Supreme Court case from India, Naveen Kohli versus Neelu Kohli. Now, this isn't just some dry legal drama. Oh no, it's a powerful human story that ended up completely rewriting the rules of marriage and divorce in the country.
And this case really forces us to ask a tough question. What happens when a marriage is emotionally, practically, completely over, but the law just won't let it end? It's a situation where people are trapped in what's basically a legal fiction, and the Kohli case pushed this exact problem to its absolute breaking point.
All right, so to really get what's going on here, we've got to go back to the beginning to see how this marriage, which looked pretty normal from the outside, started to totally unravel.
Now, this was not a quick and easy split, not by a long shot. The Kohlis got married back in '75, but things really fell apart in 1994. And from the moment they separated, it took another, get this, 12 years of just bitter fighting in court before they got a final answer.
And here's the thing you've got to keep in mind. By the time this case even got to the Supreme Court, these two had been living apart for more than a decade. The marriage that had lasted almost 20 years and produced 3 sons was just gone. The foundation had crumbled. All that was left was a fight.
So what was this all about? What was the husband actually arguing? Let's dig into the specific claims of cruelty that he brought to the court. 17. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how many legal and criminal cases the wife, Neelu Kohli, filed against her husband, Naveen. This was not a one-off argument. The court saw this as a sustained, deliberate campaign. And the sheer scope of this was staggering. We're talking about false criminal complaints for everything you can think of: forgery, theft, even dowry cruelty. There was public defamation in newspapers, an unauthorized withdrawal of almost $1 million rupees. She even tried to break up their Hindu undivided family, which in India is a special legal structure for a family's joint assets. And on top of all that, she accused him and his entire family of being, quote, a bunch of lunatics.
You know, the Supreme Court didn't mince words about this. They looked at this whole pattern of behavior, and they concluded it wasn't someone just seeking justice. No, they saw it as being motivated by a, and I'm quoting the court here, deep and intense feeling of revenge. That finding was absolutely critical. And to really get a sense of the public humiliation here, just try to imagine this for a second. Your spouse takes out an ad in a national newspaper. It says you don't work for your own company anymore and warns the whole world that doing business with you is a risk. This went way beyond a private family dispute. It was a direct assault on his reputation and his ability to make a living. Now, the journey to the Supreme Court, oh, it was a total roller coaster. The lower courts were completely split on this, which just goes to show how uncertain the law really was.
I mean, look at this. On one hand, you have the family court. They heard the case first and they granted the divorce. They saw the nonstop harassment and basically said, yeah, there's no way these two can ever live together again. But then it goes up to the high court and they look at the exact same facts and do a complete 180. They reverse the decision, pretty much forcing them to stay married on paper.
And this is where the Supreme Court of India steps in. Faced with 2 totally opposite rulings, the highest court in the land had to have the final say. And, well, its decision was going to make history.
First off, the court decided to tackle the big question. What even is mental cruelty? They said, look, it's not about one single bad act. It's the cumulative effect. It's the pattern of behavior over time that when you add it all up, just causes so much pain that living together becomes impossible. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Next up, the court really brought this other huge idea to the forefront: irretrievable breakdown. This is basically the court saying, look, let's just be real here. If a marriage is dead in every way that actually matters, emotionally, socially, physically, then what's the point of keeping it alive on a piece of paper? It's just a legal fiction. The Supreme Court also pointed out a huge legal mistake the High Court made. See, the High Court judged the case like it was a criminal trial, using the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. But this was a civil case. For that, the standard is much lower: preponderance of probability. In simple terms, you just have to show it was more likely than not that the cruelty happened. And this part really shows you the court's sense of fairness. Even though they granted the divorce to the husband because of the wife's cruelty, they didn't just leave her high and dry. In fact, they didn't just increase her alimony a little bit, they quintupled it, from 5 lakhs all the way up to 25 lakhs, to make sure she'd be financially secure. So why are we still talking about a case from over 15 years ago? Because its impact on Indian law was massive, and we're still seeing the ripples today. You can really boil down the legacy of this case to 4 huge things. 1, it broadened the definition of mental cruelty to include modern attacks like legal harassment and financial abuse.
2, it set a huge precedent. Weaponizing the court system against your spouse is, by itself, cruelty. 3, it clarified the correct standard of proof for divorce cases going forward. And finally, it pushed the common-sense idea of an irretrievable breakdown right into the legal spotlight.
And if there's one quote that just sums up the entire philosophy of the court here, it's this one. They said that a judge's order can't breathe life back into a relationship that's already gone. The law has to reflect reality, not try to create a fantasy.
The court felt so strongly about this that they did something you almost never see. They didn't just rule on the case in front of them. They directly recommended that India's parliament actually change the law, the Hindu Marriage Act. They wanted to make irretrievable breakdown an official reason for divorce because they saw that the law just hadn't caught up with real life.
Which brings us to one last, really nagging question. The Supreme Court made this urgent plea for reform way back in 2006. And yet, here we are, all these years later, and that amendment still isn't law. So you have to wonder, why? And that's a debate that's still going on today.